shooting in between these markers.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of room on the left here to put a light, and this light's going to be above. But where it is now, it's so far away from the root. You're like shining a candle at it.
Yeah.
How's it looking better?
Way higher, keep going. Bit more, mate. Reckon a bit more you've got there, roughly. Alright, have a look and you see where you think that is.
The project's called Out of the Shadows, and the top level idea is taking familiar landscapes, climbing compositions, and trying to shoot them under a new light. It's most of the light's getting on the bulbs, not in the root. Yeah, I need it like it needs to rotate down. More. And the way I envisage or intend to do that is to basically shoot without using ambient light and using either speed lights or permanent lights to present familiar places in unfamiliar ways. That one that you just adjusted,
yeah.
Can you rotate it back up a smidgen?
Yeah, so twist it this way.
Yeah, tiny amount, tiny. Perfect.
Try it first.
Spot on. Perfect. Where your left foot is entirely up to you. I'll fix all that.
Oh, that's cool.
Happy?
Yeah, it looks really good.
Feel like it was worth the effort.
Definitely. Well, I'll work out how much it costs to replace that window before
Coming up with the idea of this idea was the relatively easy bit, right? It's like, all right, basically I want to go and take a lot of pictures of stuff in the dark and use some big studio lights to light these locations up, and combining the techniques that I use that I enjoy in my portraiture and photography that I enjoy to look at. So low-key photography is primarily the type of work that I really enjoy to watch of other people's and observe and hear touch stories about. Applying them techniques into the climbing, right? It's just like, all right, it's pretty straightforward on paper. The actual hard bit is trying to convince a bunch of famous climbers to go climbing in the dark. That's the hard bit. To be fair, everyone has been psyched for it. The idea of trying to recapture familiar climbing compositions in a new light had been brewing for a while, Like, I felt pretty downbeat with the British climbing photography scene, It's just like, and I was guilty of it as well. I was part of that, right? Stick a tripod up and take a picture of a boulder. It's like, great, well done. Like, I was guilty of that. Become complacent and lazy and was sort of forgetting about like what photography means and what it's capable of doing and how it can act as a vehicle to transport people into a place and a moment in time. So I was like, I've got to do something here. Like, I need to do something. I've already got a preconceived notion of how I think it will look. I know that if I shine a light here, I know where it's going to bounce based on the environment around it. The way I imagine building these photos is the climb is secondary in some respect.
I don't know. I think if it was like about my climbing, I'd be a hell of a lot more nervous. It doesn't. I don't think it doesn't matter so much. If I can just do what Marc needs to get his shot, then everyone's happy.
You're creating the texture, the shape, the light, and the composition. You can imagine where the climber's going to be in relation to the route, and we just drop him in, like, there we go. There you go, there's the one with. You lose all the shadow.
No, yeah, I agree. I just wonder if it's the... Yeah.
It's nice to see it kind of go from daylight when you're like walking around trying to imagine what it's going to look like at night when they're all lit up, and then seeing those sort of shapes come like out in the night with all the lighting. Yeah, you can like change something that you know really well to look completely different because you can control all the different lighting aspects. Yeah, it's wicked to see.
It's mad, isn't it? Like the sort of cool lighting can make a bit of rock look pretty good. This is a new experience for me. I mean, I've been climbing for the best part of 40 years, but it's the first time I've ever come out and, well, you know, watched the sunset and let it go dark and then actually start climbing. I mean, I've been caught out on the hill before, winter climbing. You know, you might do the top pitch of an ice route by head torchlight, but that's not the intention, you know, whereas here, of course, we've deliberately come out to climb at night, and it's got a really unusual feel to it. It's very, very peaceful. Such a cool project, you know, I'm always looking for new things to do, and you know, I really feel at the moment we're seeing a lot of the same stuff, you know, especially on social media. You know, people are scared to actually buck the trend, do something different. You know, like we all sort of worry about the stuff that we put out, so, you know, seeing Marc deliberately, you know, cut a different groove and put a new slant on climbing, I mean, it's highly commendable. Climbing's a really creative activity. I mean, I've put up lots of new routes, and you know, that in itself as a process is like painting on a canvas. You know, starting with this blank piece of rock, no one's climbed it. You brush the holds, do the moves, eventually climb the thing. You know, and I think, I'm sure photography is very much the same. I mean, the way Marc's planned this, you know, and he's set about some sort of creative expression here, and I feel that climbing needs that like oxygen at the moment.
I mean, I didn't invent this idea, right? It's low-key photography, right? So let's just face it. It's nothing new in terms of the art world, but I'm not sure it's ever been combined with climbing to this extent before. All right, guys, I'm happy. Shoot. I feel like I learned something new from the lights, or I see another idea and I try and incorporate it into the next image, but it's like this, the unintended consequence of that is like this never-ending cycle of learning again. So it feels like each time I'm out is like the first time because I'm trying something new. Which basically means that the entire project I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. The logistics of some of these shoots, although the access is easy, but the technical aspects of lighting them has sometimes felt like I'm in too deep. When you've got so much kit required, we need to light a cliff up in the dark. If you actually sit down and think about what that consists of, you know, it's not just a light, it's numerous lights. You've got to power those lights up. You've got to get those lights into position, so that requires multiple ropes to be able to maneuver them on pulleys, to be able to set, various rigging things. That all requires rope. Rope weighs there's a lot of weight involved, etc., etc. It was grim.
It's like walking up to a crag you've been to 100 times before in the dark. With a head torch. I mean, you step 2 yards off the path and you're lost.
So I have felt deeply challenged at times, but that's kind of what this is all about as well. There are parts of myself that I haven't tapped into. Just kind of like, the thing, when I think about the sort of the motivation behind all of this, yeah, it becomes really apparent that I feel sad, that my brother's not going to get to see the pictures. The shadow element of it for me was bringing the parts of myself that I knew existed, we knew were there, but hadn't paid much attention to, and it was bringing them into the light. So that's that bit. That's the shadow bit for me. The subtext to that is the presentation of grief, and how that was the catalyst for embarking on that journey. So a couple of years ago, my brother passed away. Unexpectedly, really. It was not on the cards, and he was a troubled soul. He was unfortunate to have the mind occupy him the way it did. So it was a couple of years later, after he'd passed away, I recognised that there was more about what he didn't say that was actually more interesting, and I think that's actually a truth for a lot of people. We only ever really shine a light on the things we want to talk about or the things we want to see. So the real sort of nuclear vision for this project is a sort of metaphor for about how we do actually keep a lot in the dark.
The whole metaphor behind it, I'm completely on side, to do with the dark into light. And I was just talking to Marc about it when he was explaining the story behind the inspiration for the project, is something that I can completely relate to. So I was actually, for more than just climbing reasons, I'm really happy to be involved with the project.
I'd always practiced like self-reflection, but I was pretty useless at it. But when Ray passed, it became necessary. Otherwise, I was probably go off the edge a little bit. So it was necessary to get a grip of that part of me a little bit. But my behaviour changed, for a long time, and then with that behavioural change, for me came guilt, because I was hurting the people around me, so I didn't have much stress tolerance. I was, I struggled to do really basic things like show affection, so that period of time, all of the bits that made me had gone. That is single-handedly the biggest event we as a family have ever gone through. One day this feeling arose and I sat with it, and that feeling was that Ray had never seen a single image that I'd taken professionally. And then this idea came about, like, oh well, why don't I shoot something fun? And then the idea of, how can I really want to represent that loss in my life, which was Ray, and then trying to navigate how that feels and would look in an image, and that's where the shadow sort of idea comes from for me personally. You know, he's in every image essentially. That's the thing. You know, every image that is taken, every one of these shoots we go on, he's in every single image, and is represented by the shadow. You know, that's there, raised there in every image. You know. I'm done. I'm going to sit back and enjoy this experience. Come on, Charlie. Come on. What an experience.
This is cool.
Mate, these images are unreal. The real joy of life is learning to sit with feelings, emotions, recognizing that the people that you're around and the things that you do are not infinite, they are finite. So even like mundane tasks, you when you reframe them to realize that this is one less time that I'm going to be doing it, it suddenly changes the whole way in which you like function as a human being. Every time that I tell Jay that I love her, it's one less time. So I make sure that when I do it, I sit with it and I feel it. Every time I see you, it's one less time, because there will be a last time. As we age, as we get older, and our brains become more mature, we lose this art of like neuroplasticity, this ability to stretch and think abstractly, you know, and we just become set in our ways and our beliefs, and you know, and I firmly don't think that has to be the case. You know, I really think that practicing introspection, self-reflection, learning to sit in the moment, meditation, I think all of those things as a practice that we can carry through our lives help us become more outward looking and prevents our default modes from like taking hold of us, you know. I think it should be on the curriculum at school. Like I think it's that important. It's healthy to try and understand and listen to your peers and try and view from their perspective why they hold that opinion so dearly, or challenge yourself on your views and beliefs. Listen and recognize that there are a million ways of interpreting the world around you. Sit with the present and acknowledge it, and recognize that there is beauty to be found in the most mundane of things, even the things that we do time and time again.